zooming up to the front line. I've actually never seen Somali fighters so focused on what their objectives are.
Islamic militants have seized Mogadishu in Somalia, and they're expanding control across the country. It's a prospect that terrifies the West. Somalia's Islamists are accused of harboring Al-Qaeda terrorists and of destabilizing the entire Horn of Africa. Somalia's neighbors are preparing for all-out war. The militants in Mogadishu, meanwhile, are bracing themselves to defend their Islamic revolution. Mogadishu is notorious for being one of the most dangerous cities on earth. Numerous Westerners have been killed here. We're traveling into the city with armed bodyguards. We've come to see whether life in Mogadishu has changed under the militants, known as the Union of Islamic Courts.
We're driving across what was the Green Line, the worst area of fighting in the city.
Mogadishu has been reduced to rubble by a 16-year cycle of conflict involving local warlords and sharp U-turns in American foreign policy. First, the Americans intervened but clashed with the warlords. Then, after 9/11, they decided to hire some of them as bounty hunters chasing terror suspects. War-torn Mogadishu, Washington claimed, had become a haven for Al-Qaeda. By January this year, the residents of Mogadishu decided that they'd had enough and backed the Islamists to rise up and defeat the warlords.
This is one of the places in Mogadishu where a decisive battle took place between the US-backed warlords and the UIC forces. Fighting raged in the city between January and June, when the UIC finally took control of the capital.
By then, Somalia's long civil war had claimed 500,000 lives. We arrived at Mogadishu's port. During the civil war, this was devastated by fighting, a focus for competing factions trying to control the country's economy. Now there is only one faction in charge, the Union of Islamic Courts, or UIC.
50 ships have been here in the last couple of months, and they're able to deal with about 100,000 bags of food every day.
The Islamists, backed by rich Somali businessmen, are trying to get the economy back on track.
It's run by the Islamic courts, and you think that they're operating very well to get the country's economy working, do you?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's very clear. There's not any doubt.
So as a result, the Islamic courts are very popular because presumably the price of food is going down.
Yeah, they are very popular. They are very popular.
Suddenly, we noticed a commotion at the dockside. Soldiers of the Shabab, Arabic for youth, were gathering. Shabab forces are hardliners, well-trained and fired up by religion. They form a 2,000-strong stormtrooper unit within the Islamic Courts army. We discovered that the Shabab had arrested a gang of pirates on the high seas.
These chaps with their heads bowed, looking rather sheepish, are the pirates. There are 8 of them. There was a firefight when the Islamic court militias boarded the ship that was carrying charcoal to the Gulf. And they very smartly went after the pirates, boarded the ship, and brought them back to port.
The militants are keen to show that they're capable of establishing law and order by ending all forms of banditry.
This is a huge publicity coup for the Islamic court forces. There were 60 acts of piracy off Somali waters last year, making it the worst place in the world for piracy.
Even leading officials from the Islamic courts had turned up to celebrate the arrests, including the security chief Yusuf Indade.
What penalty will these pirates face if found guilty at the court? The Sheikh says that the pirates will face punishment under Islamic Sharia law, and the penalty could include execution.
The Islamic courts are sending a message to the outside world.
Sheikh Sharif, who is officially the leader of the Islamic courts, declares the waters off Somalia safe. But he also says that he doesn't feel that the international community recognises the contribution brought to security by the Islamic courts in Somalia.
Winning against the warlords in Mogadishu may have been the easiest part of the job. Now the Islamic courts are under pressure to actually govern. We went to find out more about their attempts to make the city safe.
We've come to a police station in Hamawain, the historic centre of Mogadishu. Until now, the Islamic courts have been mainly focused on subduing anarchy, but the population really wants them to establish civic institutions and administration, and this police station is part of that.
The new police force is run by the Shabab militant forces.
This is OB.
Yes.
Right, this is the OB, the occurrence book, which every functioning police station should have. Most of the incidents are not criminal, but are civic in nature. People coming back to houses which they're claiming as their own, trying to get rid of squatters, or arguments over vehicles, or arguments over places of business. Has the number of violent crimes reduced over recent months? He says that the Islamic courts have executed 2 murderers, and this has clearly sent a message to the others, and he says that the number of violent crimes has reduced.
From the police station, we travelled to the centrepiece of the new Islamic regime in Mogadishu, the courts. They're run according to Sharia law, a system of justice that is often seen as barbaric by Western observers.
We're on our way to the Central Islamic Court in Mogadishu. It's been very difficult to gain access because there's a lot of distrust of Western journalists and how we'll represent Sharia law, but finally we've been able to get an invitation.
We arrived to find the place buzzing with activity.
Islamic justice has speeded up its operations in the last few weeks. They've already handed out some executions and floggings and stoning sentences. The courtyard is full of people attending cases. The buildings are being painted and renovated. This is the first real justice system that has existed in Somalia for the last 16 years since the civil war started. Court cases were already in session around the complex of buildings. While it's true the courts can hand down harsh criminal punishments, we were surprised to find them more preoccupied by civil cases. At a central hall, we witnessed the appointment of dozens of new magistrates or qadis. One of the core issues in resolving the civil war in Somalia is the return of hundreds of thousands of properties that were looted during the fighting. And the Islamic courts have become popular because they have begun the process to return property to their rightful owners. And Sheikh Abdul Qadir is lecturing the magistrates on how they must conduct those cases. We crossed the courtyard to observe an appeal case hearing. This unusual dispute was about a man who had stabbed his wife. Sentence was that he should pay her family 5 camels, or the equivalent in cash, and the magistrates were now hearing his appeal. The man is in jail meanwhile, and the wife, who suffered internal injuries, is not going to get whatever compensation money is paid. It's going to go to her family, and she meanwhile has agreed to go back to him after he's released.
This may not look like a court in Britain, but it appeared due legal process was being followed. The Islamists have restored order in Mogadishu, even marshalling armies of workers to clear decades of rubble from the streets. It's hard to believe that the rest of the world regards them as rebels. Somalia's recognized government